ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मद् आचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः। यश्रेयस्यानिश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्। ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविर्आविर्मयेधि वेदस्य म आणिस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासिः। अनेन अधीतेन अहोरात्रान् सन्ददामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मावतु तद्वक्तारम् अवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गे स्तुष्टवाग्वं स्वस्तिनोभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा वेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिपृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणग्वं सर्वर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कुर्वेदानुवचनम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Narayan, everyone.
Okay, so the last class that we had, we started chapter 7, right? So in chapter 7, basically, chapter 7 is about Gyan and Vigyan. So it's Gyan Vigyan here. So what is Gyan? Gyan is direct perception. So direct perception against Vigyan, which is total perception, right? So we'll learn about what is Gyan, we'll learn what is Vigyan, we'll also learn what is Agyan. So there are two levels to this, right? At the first level, at a lower level, you can understand Gyan and Vigyan as theory and application. So Gyan is where you get the theory that Bhagwanji's immanence is there in everything. And then we have Vigyan, which is the application. Now, how do you recognize Bhagwanji in everything? Right? That is the Vigyan, the application of it, right? At a higher level, at a much higher level, the meaning is that there is a direct perception of Bhagwanji, the Brahman, the direct understanding of Brahman, the direct knowledge of Brahman. So these are the Gyan yogis. We are not there yet. right? So for us, getting that Gyan is really at an intellectual level. We understand it at an intellectual level only. When you become a Gyan yogi, when you are at that level, then it's a direct perception that Gyan moves from intellectualism to an experiential level, right? So that is Gyan. Then we have Vigyan. Vigyan is the application, like we said, right? So at a lower level, it is an application of it. So your intellect still has to come into play. You first have to use your intellect to know how to even look for Bhagwanji in everything. How do I see Bhagwanji in everything? And once you know it intellectually, then by constant Shravan, Manan, and Nidhi Dhyasan, you start to bring that application into your experiential level, right? So that is Vigyan. And Vigyan, and at a higher level, when you start to experience it, what does it really mean? It means that you start to understand Bhagwanji's Maya. Maya is a very, very powerful tool, a very powerful Shakti of Bhagwanji. Using this Shakti, using this energy called Maya, he has created a lot of diverse names and forms which come from the same universe, from the same universal unified form. In reality, it is undivided, universal, indivisible form. But with the help of this energy called Maya, he is able to create an illusion that there are multiple different forms and names. So Vigyan is first at an intellectual level, a process of being able to identify that, okay? And then as your understanding of Vigyan deepens, you start to appreciate how Maya really functions. You understand how it functions and how it creates that illusion. You understand the process through which Maya creates that illusion. Yeah. And then you begin to look beyond Maya, because now Maya has become a game in your hand. Now you're able to understand it. Because you're able to understand it, so you're able to look beyond it. Instead of Maya controlling you, now you're able to control Maya, just as Bhagwanji wields his Maya. Okay. Then the third part is Agyan. Agyan is ignorance or non-perception. Non-perception means what? Not being able to see the distinctness between that undivided whole versus this illusory form. So here in Agyan, you actually take these diverse names and forms to be distinct from Bhagwanji. So you take this world to be reality, the YOLO, right? That is Agyan. When you think that people are different, this is how it is, this is exactly the world, so my life is all about, acquiring, or like you live this life only once, so satisfy your senses. All of that is part of Agyan or non-perception, because you've not really realized the truth at all. So you're living an untrue life. Okay? Now, for us to be able to actually have this total perception, for us to be able to move beyond the intellectual understanding of the total perception to actual experiential understanding, we need to have the right equipment, right? And what is that right equipment? Our antakaran. Our antakaran is the equipment. Antakaran, for antakaran to grasp the gross, it has to be gross. For the antakaran to now move beyond the gross and to be able to understand and connect with the subtle, naturally your equipment has to become subtler. So Bhagwanji then told us at the beginning of the chapter, what will help you make your equipment subtler? So what was those equipment? First he said, what were those methods? The first is, he said, you must have unbounded love for divinity, unbounded love for Lord. What does unbounded love for Lord really means? It means having an extremely strong desire to know God, to understand God. So, and that desire should be so strong that no other desire comes to obstruct that desire. You want to go out and party, You want to have like imagine the strength of desire you can have to live, or the strength of desire that you may have had for creating your own house, or to get something, anything, right? Like to get that next position, or that next, or that, or certain bank balance, or like, in school, maybe the college that you wanted to go to, any of those desires, right? Imagine the strength of those desires. The desire to know the Lord must be way higher and stronger than all of these other desires. So much so that when there would be enough number of things that will come in the way. Will your desire to know Lord go beyond? It will push through all these obstacles that will constantly be placed in your way. That's how strong this desire should be. So of all the desires in the world, this is the highest desire which you must cultivate. Second is there must be full faith in the Lord and complete dependence. So what is the full faith on? The full faith that if I do the things that Bhagwanji is asking me to do, that anugrah, the anukampa, his grace will come on me, so that I will then be able to actually perceive him. We can only do the activities, the actions of Shravan, Manan, Nidhi Dhyasan, constantly looking for him, meditating. We can do all these actions. But the knowledge, the gyan, the actual perception will only come with his grace. So having that full faith that if I do this, Bhagwanji's grace will 100% come on me. That full faith must be there. So which means that if I'm not getting to my end goal, then I have to ask myself, where am I faltering in my action? And not doubt that, oh, maybe this thing doesn't really work, right? That faith shouldn't falter. Maybe Bhagwanji is not looking out for me. Look what has happened in my life. Bhagwanji is not looking out for me. No, that faith shouldn't falter. No matter what is happening, God is looking out for me, and I'm moving towards my ultimate welfare. That faith and complete dependence. What does complete dependence look like? Complete dependence means मुझे faith नहीं आ रहा है. I do not have faith in Lord. Even that, place it at his feet. I do not have the faith, Lord. I do not have I want to do this Anushtan. I'm not able to do. I'm constantly getting veered off the course by things that keep happening in my life. But you know that I have a strong desire to do this. I have a strong desire to do my 2 shlokas a day, but something or the other keeps getting into the way. How do I do this? I want to have a complete, I want to win over the demon of anger inside of me, or the demon of impatience inside of me, or the demon of procrastination or laziness inside of me. But I'm unable to. Help me, Lord. You are the only one who can help me. Having that complete dependence on him, whatever problem comes in your way, put it at his feet with full faith, and know that he will show you the way. He will get you the people you need to meet to help you overcome that obstacle. He will get you to read the things, or listen to the things, or give you the energy inside of you, or create the right circumstances around you, which will eventually help you overcome that obstacle. Okay, so that is what dependence on Lord looks like. So desire for the Lord, extremely strong desire, full faith and complete dependence on him. And finally, must meditate on Lord at all times. Constant nidhi dhyasan of what we read in Gita. Constant nidhi dhyasan, manan nidhi dhyasan, manan nidhi dhyasan. It isn't something that you do at any particular point of time in the day. This should be a constant thing going on. Whatever you may be doing, you are in office, you are shopping, you are outside, you are partying, you're with friends, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're doing your regular chores. There should be constant manan and nidhi dhyasan. But that constant manan and nidhi dhyasan will not happen if we are not reminding ourselves, because the power, the glamour, the glitz of the world is extremely strong. Unless we do our regular something to anchor us, something as a small reminder, whether that reminder is like a 2-minute thing that you read in the morning to ground yourself and to come back to that set of principles, or it's a constant reminder that you do every hour, whatever it is, you have to figure out your practices, right? If you don't have that, then that constant meditation on Lord, that manana nidhi dhyasan will not happen, which is why a lot of these practices are constantly pushed on. That is why we are always talking of that. So Sunday class is one such thing, but it is at a regular frequency, but once a week, not enough. Beyond this, we have to get something else in our daily life, whatever works for you. Yeah. Now, the question then is that why are there such few people who have had this perception? So Lord gives us a very strong assurance. First, he says, yes, that's true. Very, very few people in this world, first of all, very few people have this total perception. Most of the people are operating in the space of non-perception, in the space of ignorance. And why is that the case? Not because this is very difficult to understand, not because it is very difficult to incorporate in our lives, not because this jnana is very difficult. It is guhya, it is a deep secret, but it's a deep secret that is very accessible if you walk towards it. The problem is most people don't walk towards it. If you will make the effort, you will 100% get it. The people who don't get it are people who just don't walk towards it. They will just not walk the distance. It's literally like, you're here, there is that secret, walk towards it, and this is the way to walk towards it. That has been laid out for us. Most people do not walk it. And why do they not walk it? Because it's like you walking down the road towards your goal, and then there is all of these fun things happening around the side. So many distractions. There is a fair going on. There is a party going on. There are people sitting around laughing, having fun. There's dance going on. You're walking towards that path and you're constantly looking around. And if there is nothing to anchor you, to keep reminding you, if your goal is not being reminded to you, it is so easy to get distracted. Somebody will come and tap, say, hey, 5 minutes, just come here, rest for 5 minutes. You've been walking so long. If your goal is not in front of you being reminded to you, you will sit for 5 minutes and before long, you would have forgotten your path. The glamour, the glitz of Maya is so strong. That is why, and people get lost in that glamour, the glitz, the sounds, the music, all of the things that bind us. That is why people do not walk this path, and that is why people do not have that total perception. Not because it is a very difficult to gain knowledge. Then now he is revealing to us, after this exposition, Lord starts to reveal the Vigyan to us. And before the Vigyan, he wants to give us the Gyan. So what is the Gyan? He tells us the Gyan is that he is immanent in everything. He's present in everything. His immanence is there in everything, right? And how does that work? It works by saying that there are two parts to him. There are two forces. One is sentient force and one is insentient nature. The insentient nature is composed of 23 different versions. So at the top, his insentient nature, the primary elements of his insentient nature are only three: Sat, Raj, and Tam. We will read a little bit more about it in the shloka that we'll cover today. Sat, Raj, and Tam. These are the primary elements. From these three primary elements have 23 modifications. Only these three, okay? So these are the three parts of his, they are three primary elements of his insentient nature, which then transform into 23 elements. Those 23 elements are what? The three elements of our antakaran: intellect, mind, ego. And then beyond those, there are 20 elements, starting from 5 elements, the 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, space, and ether. These 5 gross elements then correspond to 5 subtle elements, the 5 tanmatras. And what are those 5 tanmatras? Earth corresponds to odor, water or the fluidity corresponds to fluidity, fire corresponds to effulgence or brilliance. Then your akash, the air corresponds to touch. And finally we have, okay. Yeah.
So,
and finally we have ether, which corresponds, this one. Yeah. And then finally we have ether, which corresponds to vibration. So these are the five gross elements, and the corresponding 5 subtle elements. Now, these gross elements, subtle elements, they have corresponding 5 senses of action and 5 senses of perception. 5 senses of perception, which are outward facing, with which we absorb information from outside, and 5 senses of action, again outwardly placed, with which we impact the external environment. Right? So 20 of these plus the 3 constituents of our antakaran are the 23 modifications of the 3 primal elements, which is Sat, Raj, and Tam. This is his insentient nature. And then we have, separate from all of this, is his sentient nature, the life element, the consciousness principle. The consciousness principle, which at the same time activates this entire insentient nature and at the same time stays completely away from it. Neither is it present in the insentient nature, nor is the insentient nature present in it, but it acts under the force of, or by the energy derived from the consciousness principle. These two,
which in
are
this chart is the
transcendental self.
yes.
The transcendental self. Yeah? Now we are going to start the next, the Shloka 7, where he's going to talk about how these two are the janani, the womb from which everything in this world is born. These are the causal factors. You have to, this is the gyan. So once we go, then we will move towards the gyan part of it, of recognizing him in everything that we see around us. So he'll give us examples for us to start visualizing this. Okay. Sorry, so Shlok 6, right? So let's start with
I'll leave the thing on that.
yeah, that's okay.
Just make sure.
Okay. So Kakuli, will you read connection after Shlok 5 and then we'll go to Shlok 6?
Yes. Describing the sentient and the insentient nature, the Lord now points to his role as the controller of both.
Etatyonini bhutani
Etadhyonini bhutani
sarvanityupadharaya
sarvanityapadharaya
aham kritsnasya jagatah
aham krishnasya jagatah
prabhavah. Nice. Prabhavah pralayasthatha
prabhavah pralayastatha.
Etadyonini is born out of these two natures. Born out of these two natures. Which two natures? The sentient nature and the insentient nature. Bhutani, all beings. Sarvani, all. Iti is aisa or this. Upadharaya, samaj, understand. Aham, me. Kritsnasya is sampurna, whole. Jagatah, world. Prabhavaha is prabhav or the source. Pralayasthatha is dissolution.
Understand clearly that these two natures are the womb from which all beings are brought forth, and in me lies the source of creation, as well as the receptacle of dissolution of the whole universe. God as the source of creation and receptacle of dissolution of universe. In this shloka, the Lord has used two expressions for his entire creation. In the first line, he refers to all beings by the words Sarvani Bhutani to denote the animate world of human beings and animals, birds, vegetation, and the like. In the second line, he refers to the entire universe by the words Krishtanishya Jagataha to denote all sentient and insentient creature comprising the entire world of objects, feelings, or thoughts. He tells that all beings are brought forth by the two natures, and that in him lie the source of creation as well as the receptacle of dissolution of the whole universe of objects, feelings, or thoughts. These expressions have been adopted to clear an erroneous view which prevails in some minds. Some people think that God, as universal soul, can be visualized as immanent in all animate beings, but to think that he is equally immanent in inanimate objects might not be a correct view. To clarify this, the Lord says that every object, feeling, or thought is only a manifestation of his existence. In other words, whatever exists or whatever is thought of or felt is due to his existence. It is his sentient nature which activates the animate world by its vital power.
Yeah. So there are two other concepts or phrases here, which is Prakriti and Paraprakriti, right? So we understand this from chapter 2 also, right? When somebody passes away, right? What is left behind? The Prakriti, the body. The person is no longer referred to as the self. Like if I pass away, then the body is not called, oh yeah, Abhinav is lying here. No, Abhinav has passed away. That's the body is left behind, right? So what's happened here is the Jivatma, the Jiv Shakti powered the body. So Prakriti is the world without consciousness. It just is. And it just is. That body just is, and it will remain as such. To give it life is the Paraprakriti, which is the Prakriti which is filled with consciousness. And that's what we have. Right? And that's, I think Tuvina already explained the sentient and insentient quite beautifully. But that was the only additional thing.
And importantly here, Bhagwanji is saying that it is not just people or animate things where you should imagine as God being present, right? Because we are always talking about the consciousness principle, right? So if consciousness is present, that means only sentient beings are representative of God. Bhagwanji is saying that's not true. There are certain parts of insentient nature where his consciousness principle exists, and hence you see them as sentient beings. But everything else also, which is insentient, whether it is rock or minerals or its thoughts or feelings, all of those are also representations of the Lord, the brilliance of the gold, the energy that is latent in coal or in mineral oil. This is all representative of God's immanence. Okay? He is present in everything, not just sentient beings. Just don't think of him as that Jivatma. He is present as the important part or the dharma or the natural state of being in everything, not just sentient beings, because we have always thought of God as being there in animals or plants and all, and he's removing that erroneous concept here. Okay, so next time, that's why when we say that, respect everything, right? Respect as in like respect even the chappals, right? You wearing chappals, don't throw them around. Should be grateful to them for how they protect our feet and treat them with respect. Now, what does treating a chappal with respect mean? Don't throw them around. You take them off, keep them in the proper place, keep them properly, wash them, clean them the way you would clean in your clothes, and then wear them with that gratefulness that I thank you, God, that I have these chappals to take care of my feet, right? That is how we should be treating everything in life, that respect that you accord to the Lord. The next shloka. So, Naina, will you read with us?
Explaining this point further, the Lord says,
Mattah partaram jnanyati.
Mattah parataram jnanyati.
Mattah partaram nanyati.
Mattah parataram nanyati.
Kanchitasti dhananjaya.
Kanchidasti dhananjaya.
Mai sarvamidam protam.
Mayi sarvamidam protam.
Sutre manigana iva.
Sutre manigana iva.
Mattah, compared to me. Mujhse, compared to me. Partaram, superior. Nanyati, no, anyati. No is no, not. Anyati, different from me, other than from me, other than me. Kanchit asti is kinchit and asti. Koi bhi, kinchit, koi bhi, any. Asti is hai, exists. Mai, in me. Sarva, sarvam idam, sarvam idam. Sarvam is all, idam is this. Protam, interwoven, gutha hua, interwoven. Sutre is a string, in the string. Manigana is beads, basically beads, form of beads. Iva, just as.
O Dhananjaya, there is nothing whatever superior to me. I am interwoven in all the objects of the universe, as a string is interwoven in the form of beads. The Lord manifested in the form of the universe. This is a very important shloka in which the Lord explains his eminence in everything in the universe. He gives the example of a string of cotton beads, in which cotton string itself is knotted in the form of beads. These beads, though entirely composed by cotton string, look different from it in shape and size. In the same manner, the Lord explains that he, as the universal all-pervading existence, manifests only himself in the objects of the creation, though on account of diversity in names and forms, the objects appear to be different from each other. Ornaments of gold have different shapes and names and are worn variously in different limbs, but they are made of nothing but gold. Diversity in names and shapes and sizes is only to suit the various uses, but for the purpose of valuation, they are considered to be made of the same material. In the same way, the multiple forms of the universe on deep reflection are found to be composed of him alone and should be viewed thus for the conduct of one's life.
So this is also a reflection that we always say that in the world, everything we interact with is under VVGP, right? So Vyakti, Vastu, Ghatna, Paristhiti. Person, object, situation, and circumstance, right? Everything that we experience in this world is under VVGP, and that is coming to us 24 hours a day. As long as we are awake, we're experiencing something or the other because of the VVGP, right? Now, what Bhagwanji is saying in this shloka is you're actually interacting with me through this VVGP. So coming to Tuhina's example right now of chappals, you're interacting through, when you show reverence to that chappal, you're showing reverence to me, because somebody somewhere, I gave them the grace to think and make and build this chappal for your feet. When you're giving reverence to this table that holds the laptop, you're giving reverence to the many people that it took to go build that table. And that was through my energy, that was through my strength, that he's made all of this available to us, right? So, and there's a subtle difference here. He's saying VVGP, when it comes, you interacted in such a way that you see me everywhere. But we're not there yet. We very quickly go to the mera tera. This is mine, that is yours. You did this wrong, I did this right. How could you do this to me? No, I don't want to talk to him. Right? Like, we so quickly fall into these traps, which are the lower form. It's not the higher form. And Bhagwanji is saying every time you do that, you're not operating from divinity. And the only way for you to consistently keep seeing divinity constantly around is by doing sadhana, right? By doing practice, daily practice, which we've talked about earlier, the Nam Jap and the Swadhyay and stuff, but also daily practice of looking for him around till you see him. The other part here is the way we interact today with VVGP is to make us feel good. So we will do the VVGP we like, which makes us feel good about ourselves. This could be another human being. I like to interact with them because they make me feel good. This could be an object. This could be like things you like, situations, circumstances, everything that makes you feel good. And that is attachment. You are, yeah. Kakuli, I'll come to you in a second.
Okay.
So, and that is attachment. So we tend to operate, our by default operation method is to go for things that we like, go for things we don't like, and that's how we interact with the world. Rather than experiencing the world in such a way, even if it's unfavorable, to see Bhagwanji in it. Yeah, Kakuli, please. And that's the shift we have to make.
So having understood, like, you have to see divinity in everything, how do you see divinity in extreme adverse situations, say like what happened in Texas today? How do you really bring yourself to understand that that is also a play of God? As a normal person, don't you start questioning? Because that was like innocence out there, right? I mean, or is it then you say that all those children are part of a journey, and it's so their soul's journey, and that was meant to be, or they were, it's part of what they're carrying from their past life. How do you really understand or start thinking about these situations?
Okay, so firstly, so there are 2-3 things from my perspective. Duna, of course, will add, but from my perspective, 2-3 things. One is that even in your statement, right, there is a subtlety of attachment that you're expressing towards baby, towards life, towards living, right? Honestly, we understand now in the Gita that all of this is Maya. People will come and go, right? How they come and go, we don't have any control over, but they will come and go based on their prarabdha, based on what they have to experience, and based on what they have to create. This is honestly, we have no insight to that script, right? All our focus, honestly, should be in those situations, pray for his grace to give people the energy, to give people the strength to see the light, to deal with this in a healthy manner. Pray for him to give that strength inside to the people so that they can continue to go live powerful lives for whatever they need to create, right? So, and a lot of times in the VVGP that we experience, we tend to immediately experience very gross emotions, right? like you were expressing, right? Whether it's grief that becomes anger, or sadness, or and when the moment you've experienced those emotions, you've anyways come on this chart, you've anyways operating at a lower level. So you need to come to you need to first become aware that, okay, I'm getting agitated, I've lost my touch with Satagun. Then you need to go back, do whatever you need to get yourself into a state of clearer thinking for you to be able to process this information, or person or object, whatever it is.
So carrying on from what Avinav was saying, right? There is nothing wrong in experiencing emotions. Not just nothing wrong. You will experience emotions. Okay. At no point of time in our journey, to the extent that I understand it at this point of time, will you ever not be able to experience emotions, because it is part of this this Maya in which we operate. It is part of the law. So for example, if my body, it will experience pain if you put a needle into it. If you put this body in fire, it will experience burning sensation, right? You can't get away from it. However realized you may be, your body will still experience those things, correct? Similarly, your heart, your emotional state will change. Those emotions will come because it is part of the law. You will experience them. And that's totally fine. That is what you're supposed to experience if you are a fully functioning human being. Okay. The question is, how do we act from there on? Are we reacting to those emotions? Am I reacting to what I feel on my body, inside of, in my mind, in my heart, whatever I'm feeling? Am I reacting to it? Or am I able to create that gap, that air gap between my experience of the VVGP and how I act towards that VVGP? What I say, what I do beyond that. If we can create that gap, and instead of reacting on an auto mode, and when we are in an auto mode, we know that we are coming from our animalistic behavior, we are coming from our perpetuated habits. Instead of being that person who's reacting, if we are instead figuring out what is the right response in this situation, whether it is urgent, upsetting, angry, full of grief, full of sadness, or whether it is full of excitement of any kind, if we are able to respond to it appropriately in the best possible way, if we are able to analyze, this is the situation, here are the 7 potential responses that can happen, and I will choose the best suited to the situation, then we are in touch with our divinity. Our divinity is guiding. Satogun is guiding the Raj and the Tam. And that is the state we have to reach towards, you have to aspire towards. Ultimately, we have to let go of Sat also. But let's begin with our ability to stay in Satogun in every situation, such that Raj and Tam get guided by the Sat.
So, just to add here, right, like all of us go through adverse situations, and if not now, we're going to go through it. That is part of our prarabdha that we have to experience. And in the world, there are lots of inspiring people who've gone through an adverse situation in an incredible way. And after they do it, it seems like, oh, it was straightforward to do that choice, to make those choices. But when those similar adverse situations come in our life in much smaller magnitude, we have to become aware how quickly we move, shift our base. And I say this with an example of a person we met this weekend. Tuna met her last weekend, and then we caught up with him on Friday. I don't know his story in much detail, but I think he's our age or whatever. And in 18, 19 or 20,
When he was 2000, it was the year of 2006. He was in a massive car accident. And in that car accident, the result of that car accident was that his right arm was amputated. and his left leg
Right
was
leg.
left. Right arm is amputated. He only has a
And-
left arm.
Yeah, and his right leg is permanent.
Okay, one of the legs is permanently disabled, permanently. Like he cannot walk properly. He walks with like this very, like he can't, for example, turn his leg. When he sits down, he has to, after a point, put his leg up straight because there's so much pain. Even now, like it's 2022, right? This happened in 2006. So he's a very disabled person from that perspective, physically disabled. And as you can imagine, like the accident was so severe that most of the people didn't think that he will be able to make it from that situation. He actually made it, and not just made it, he actually has transformed that experience into a very powerful force that helps people overcome adverse situations in their lives, and not just overcome, but actually be able to transform that energy into a positive force. So he has done it for himself, and now he shows others how they can do the same with their lives. And he is now running a very he's running an educational institute. He is a he's a keynote speaker, and he runs lots of different types of programs which help people speak better, influence better, or connect to others better, or how to overcome adverse situations. So that this is a very gross situation where most people would probably lose hope in their lives, or be like be given into helplessness or a state of victimization of like, why me, how did I go through this, and what's going on with me, right? Like, and you can become a helpless victim very, very quickly, whereas this person chose to have a different point of view, and he chose to create this as such a powerful medium to talk to people.
So the difference also is this, right? Like when we go through adversity, we always, why me, comes up very quickly. I need this. I want this. No, I need to take care of my kid. I need to make sure my kid's career is okay. My kid's life is good. Like all of these are me, I want, give me more. Right? Now, a person like Sam, who's gone through this, if he was saying, I need this, please help me with that, I want this, you all of us would be risen up to like, yeah, we should help you. Whatever we can do to help you, right? Because that's just simple empathy that will kick in for us. But he's saying, no, I'm enough. I want to give you guys more. Right? And again, all of this sounds inspirational, but the bedrock of this transformation are exactly these principles. I know Sam probably has never read the Gita or whatever it is, but like we read in the shlokas in the previous chapter, he's definitely yoga brushed. And the principles he talks about to help people out of adversity and rise up are exactly the same. And we are reading exactly the same things. So it's our duty to practice this on the small things that come in our life. Because when the big adversity comes, we will not be prepared otherwise. And if on a daily basis you're too worried about the small things, then we're not doing our work. We're not doing justice to our sadhana. We're not doing justice to the practice that God's making available to us through VVGP.
Just a small question. Where did Sam get the courage and the transformation, that motivation from in him to do that?
I don't know. I don't know where he got it himself from, but somewhere he got it and he acted on those principles. I don't know level of.
When I went to India, I was there for a long time and I met a similar person. This person is a doctor himself. And I was introduced to him and I didn't know anything much about him. And that's when I came to know that this guy had an accident about 15 or 20 years back, and in which his 55% body was damaged. And he's the India's longest coma survivor. And when I just met him randomly, but when I read about him and the inspiration that he gives and the positive energy, and I can't believe that's the most happiest person I've ever met, ever. He was he lost his wife, he lost his child, he lost his mother-in-law. He said, I mean, he says, I had a choice either to keep crying and being the victim and take the sympathy from the whole planet because I'm 50% impaired and I've lost so much, or I can, I mean, I chose the other way. And he himself now is a doctor. He's a practicing doctor himself, and he sings, he dances, he's so full of life. I mean, it's been an eye-opening experience for me. I just can't believe a human being like this who's lost and who's physically impaired, but you see him, you can't. He said, I don't know how many people gave him blood, and now his sole purpose of life is just to give. And what you do is just the only thing you have to do in life is just be happy. That's it. There's nothing much to do in life. You don't have to make principles. बस खुशी रहना है और कुछ करना ही नहीं है, बस खुशी रहो. I mean, I still, when you started speaking, I thought you're talking about the same person, But when you said Sam, I mean, I just can't believe a human being like this who lost everything and can be so happy, truly happy, and he's one person, if you call him, he's forever willing to talk, he's forever willing to, he's a doctor, he's he's got patience. But I mean, I still, the question goes back, where did, I mean, हम तो गीता पढ़ रहे हैं और मैं but still, अटक जाते हैं, बहुत घबरा जाते हैं, कहाँ से इतनी एनर्जी आती है?
So the difference
is God.
The difference is this. Most of us look for validation outside. But these people are very keen to work on the inside, on themselves.
Themselves.
Veena said they also go through experiences. They also experience emotions, shame. I wish this happened, that happened. They experience and they let go. And they're like, I will choose to operate from somewhere else. Emotion आएगा जाएगा, सब कुछ आएगा जाएगा, हमारी choice अलग है. But
you are not defined by the darkness you endure. You are defined by the light that you want to emanate. You're not defined by your past. You're defined by the future you create in the present. You're defined by your present, because present is the only moment in which any action can occur. And we all know by now that there's nothing in this world that can exist without action. And the only moment where an action occurs is present. So who we are being in the present is, is what defines us. And again, in both these examples, it isn't as if like day one, they experienced a tragedy and then suddenly overnight, they are like laughing and, they are like, oh, I'm like, no, it doesn't happen that way.
It doesn't.
You will have emotions that are appropriate to the situation, and you will work through them diligently. You will experience them wholly, completely. You will not reject them. Rejection means you are going to suppress them. If you will suppress them, then they will come out at some point of time, because you have to experience them. They have happened because you have to experience that situation, that experience and if you're able to utilize them properly, then you're able to transform yourselves in the way that only that experience could transform you. And Bhagwan Ji ka the Leela, of Bhagwan Ji is very, 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 it's very difficult for us to even understand, even like 10% of his Maya. So every situation that happens has 2,500, like we say, ek tir do shikar. You have like, you can do two things with one arrow. He is like somebody who does 25,000 things with one arrow. One situation will occur, and the reason why it has occurred is going to be multifold. For the same person, it can have multiple reasons and multiple transformations that it's meant to occur in that person's field. And then every single person that person is associated with. Every situation obviously is associated with multiple sets of people, first of all. And then there's a second larger influence that happens because of the people who are directly involved in the situation. Every one of them is meant to go through a certain transformation that only and only that event situation could have brought in the most effective manner possible, in the fastest and in the kindest manner possible. Sometimes those situations that happen do not seem kind at all because of the way we view that VVGP, but has happened because of a good reason. And if that power, that energy that is created in that moment, if it is used appropriately with the satogun on top, with satogun in the driver's seat, then it will, without a hesitation, it will move us closer to him, towards our ultimate welfare, will help us transform in ways that will bring us closer to our ultimate welfare, to our ultimate destination. And that faith is very important. And if we are not getting it in that moment, then it is for us to move back and say, okay, I have full faith, but unfortunately, I'm not able to see the good in this. I am unable to see what value can come out of this. I can only see the negative in this situation, Bhavanji, or in this person, or in this thing, or in this event. I need you to guide me. Dedication to the Lord, dedicated to the Lord. I am unable to see this, Lord. Guide me. Tell me, what am I supposed to learn from this? So, for example, in this Texas situation, apart from everything that is happening at the core of it, somebody sitting very far from it, just listening to it or reading about it or hearing about it from some other source, if it is affecting us in any manner, then there is something for us. There is something inside of my core that it is speaking to. That is why it is affecting me. It is affecting me and not the other 1,000 people who are reading about it. That means there is something for me to transform, to act on, to learn from. It is happening for a reason. And I am not at the core of that situation, because that's not the experience I need for my transformation. I am sitting far from the epicenter, but I'm still feeling those vibrations. That's the only amount of vibrations I need for my transformation.
So when this incident happened, right, the one that you're referring to in the schools, so some of you've met Vedant. Vedant's a kid, he's very active, and he's very enamored with fighting, right? Like most boys, I think 6 years, good, bad, fighting, evil, I want to win. Very enamored with weapons. Of course, we don't have guns at home as a principle, but if we have like those plastic swords and we have bow and arrow and all of that, and he just acts out wrestling and fighting almost throughout the day, right? And he always asks us, gun, 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 gun. Everybody else has, why don't I have, etc. So when this came up, for me, I felt really sad, but then I wanted to share my sadness with him, so that he also realizes that this is what he sometimes does as a child. It may seem like a trivial thing, but it's not. And when I told him about that, and I told him that, look, this is why I tell you, gun is not a toy. It is not something to ever enjoy or play with. You have to be very, very highly trained and educated and skilled before you get it. And if you want to be that person, good. God bless you, do it. But it's not a toy. And he immediately understood it. Right? So for me, that energy that rose up because of this incident, for me, it transformed immediately in that moment, in that conversation with him. So for you also, it's about finding it in your life right here, what you can act on. And if you can't, just pray so that you can give your energy to the people who are going through that experience. Right?
And also, I just want to add on something. What Rita was saying, and you guys were talking about the person who had that kind of a big accident, and then sometime back I was hearing Shishi Ravi Shankar's talk, and what he was mentioning was resonating so much what you guys are talking, but he was saying the when the person is utterly helpless, or feel that kind of a gratitude, then the total dependency, what Tuhina was explaining in the beginning, that happens. So then they get attachment to the God, the desire of the God, it automatically happens, and we get all the answers from within. So that is what just I mean, it was so happened because just yesterday I heard that video. Today we are like, talking about it. That just I want to mention.
It's so true, right? Like, I have a friend in Bombay who's going through a very extensive surgery. Her husband is hardcore, like, atheist type of person, doesn't like praying, doesn't like puja and all of that. And because now his wife is going through this and they've gone through it for a year, he is like, no one's tell anything, but naturally he wakes up every morning and he goes and he prays and he goes to the temple, because end of the day, that's the source of strength for all of us.
But this is another thing to remember, right? When tough times come, tough times are the moments when we connect most with God, right? Unfortunately, that's the truth for most of us. So when good times come, then we veer away. We are too busy having a good life. And when the tough time comes, immediately, Bhagwanji. We all sit down in front of Bhagwanji. And it may start with like, Bhagwanji, save me from this situation. Please help me. Please help me. It starts with that.
Or Bhagwanji, let my cricket team win. That's how it started.
Bhagwanji, let my cricket team win. So we start from that, and then we eventually go down towards the complete dependence. The more difficult the situation, the tougher the problem, the more helpless we feel. First, we all are karma yogis, right? Now we are not karma yogis, we are karmis. We are karmis. First thing is, we'll do everything possible. Then we will use that situation to connect to the Lord when nothing else works, as a last resort. So sometimes these are situations that get created in our lives because we have veered too far away from Lord. And this is his way of bringing us back on that path. Because in our happy times, we've gone too far away from him. So God has to like go. See, it's like this, right?
And instead of, just I want to add one line. Instead of using Bhagwanji as that last resort, the whole Gita is use it as the first resort. But find Bhagwanji in everything that you do, and then everything else will fall in place.
See, Kabir has said this, right? Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, to dukh kahe ko hoye. This is the crux.
I didn't understand it.
Dukh mein sumiran sab kare. Dukh mein, when you are sad, sumiran sab kare. Bhagwan ko you remember Lord at that time. Dukh mein sumiran sab kare. Everybody remembers him when you are in a bad space. Sukh mein kare na koi. Nobody remembers him in the happy times. Sukh mein sumiran jo kare. Who remembers him in the good times, to dukh kahe ko hoye. Dukh will never come. And this is what we always say. Gita is our practice in the good times so that we get prepared for the wartime. If we are not practicing it in our easy times, in our happy times, when everything is going fine, if we are not using that time for our anushthan, for our practice, for our swadhyay, when the difficult time comes, it will be the first thing out of the window. Your puja, your swadhyay will be the first thing that will be, it's like, oh, this jettison this out, because I have to be present for doing this. This is more urgent. And then your only things that will come out of you are the habits you have built up over a period of time. So the time to create habits, time to learn, time to work on yourself is when you're not in pressure. Just as we said, that time to do meditation is not when you're feeling agitated. There is no way you can do meditation when you're agitated. Meditation happens only when we are in a calm state of mind already. And the whole point of meditating constantly and practicing meditation at the time of calm state is so that our agitations become lesser and lesser and lesser in the first place. So every time a negative situation comes, we should be grateful to God that he has brought us back to him. Our biggest growth happens in the most negative moments, or our perceived negative moments. And that is why when we start to, our buddhi becomes more sukshma, all apparently, materialistically speaking, negative situations become a blessing to get closer to Lord, a blessing to transform ourselves, a blessing in which we will change something that was not working for us, but we never recognized it or were too resistant to change. In those moments, that resistance wears away, making way for transformation. A lot of things that had become stale in our lives and we were not letting them go. A situation comes that will take it away per force because we are not letting it go. God keeps telling us, let it go, let it go, let it go. We don't let it go. No, we want to hold on to it. Then this flood will come that will cleanse us. So every negative situation then starts to be seen as a blessing. And then we become filled with gratitude for even those situations. Because it doesn't matter. End of the day, it is all for our ultimate benefit. A blessing or a lesson. A blessing or a lesson. And it's very difficult for us to really understand the way Lord works or his functioning, right? So I remember, I don't remember the story very in exact minute details. I'll tell you the purport that I remember from it. I remember reading this as a part of one of the Purans that I had read. So this is when Parvati ji had requested Shivji to take her on a tour of the world. So Parvati ji used to stay, usually she used to only stay in her own world, which was like perfect in every way. And Shivji would come to visit her, and then he would again then go on his Brahman of the world. So one day she insisted that she wants to go with him. And Bhagwanji knew why she has asked. He knew exactly what the result of this is going to be as well. But then he knew that this is the inevitable law and this has to happen. So he said, okay, let's go. So he took her on this journey. On that journey, she saw in a village, she saw a man who was working very hard in the fields. He was a farmer, extremely hard, toiling from day, morning till night. And yet, year after year, the crop was failing and he was going through a lot of duress, right? And she asked Bhagwanji that, why are you doing this to him? He's working so hard, he takes your name, look, and then all of this is going through him. He's going through so much of hardship, right? So Bhagwanji didn't really say anything. He just said ki, like Parvati, he's going through what he needs to go through. So she didn't say anything because she knew that he knows so much more and, she doesn't understand his ways. The reality was that he had done something. Now, I don't remember the exact, that story has exact details of what this person had done in a previous life, the results of which he was cutting through this experience. And then he goes home. That guy goes home and he asks his wife, like, I'm very hungry, serve me food. And his wife is very upset and angry. She says, there's no food at home, there's no money, there's no food, you sleep hungry. So in that anger, he slapped his wife really hard, like really hard. And then Bharati was again shocked, like, what is this happening? Why is this, like, he's upset, he's angry, he's hungry, and now he's hit his wife. That's such a wrong thing to do. So again, Shivji said, he didn't say anything, but in the background, what was happening? This woman had a lot of attachment to her son, and her son was absolutely good for nothing. So what she used to do was she used to keep giving money out of attachment instead of using it appropriately for managing the house. She would keep giving it to this son, who would then go and waste it in jua, in like drinking and other bad habits. So she was doing certain wrong things out of her attachment to her son, which resulted in her experiencing a lot of like wrong things from the husband, right? Now, so she's basically bearing through her own prarabdha. And then this guy, in that moment, that wife got extremely angry and she picked up an Ari and she killed her husband in that wave of anger. Now again, Parvati was extremely shocked, like, what is going on here? Like, this just seems so wrong. Now she's killed him. And now she's very appalled by the behavior of the wife now, right? With whom she was feeling empathy and sympathy for a while back. Then it turns out about like why all of this happened. There's again a story behind it as to like what had this guy done for which now he's reaping the rewards of. But all of this in that moment, it all just feels so unjust and wrong and weird. This stuff happening in the background, which we are not even aware of, that's creating the situations of the moment. Then again, they go to another part of the village and they see that a man is, he's an accountant, and he is, extremely worried. He has a very good house. He has a lot of money. His family is well cared for and all. That man is unable to sleep. He's constantly worried. He's not able to sleep. That makes him anxiety prone. That makes him full of stress and upset. And he's trying very hard to just go to sleep. And he's praying to Lord, please allow me to sleep. Please allow me to sleep. And he's unable to sleep. He's just tossing, turning all through the night. And the woman is like, Parvati is like, this is so sad. Like, why is he going through so much of mental torture? Why is he not able to get peace and happiness? And like, he works so hard. He does all of this work all day. In the background, then what's the story here? That man helps his customers to cook their books so that they can avoid paying the right tax. He's doing all of these other things through his trade, through the vibhuti he has got, the art or the work that he has got. He's using it for wrong purposes, to help his clients in a wrong fashion, to achieve wrong ends. And that creates, the resultant is that anxiety, that stress, right, which is now not allowing him to sleep. So everything that goes on in this world is full of, like, it seems unjust at the surface of it, but there's so much going on in the background that we will never be privy to. So as Shalini Didi always says, bahar jo hota hai na, whatever is happening in the VVGP outside is exactly why it is happening by God's will. It's his will that is always, his will wins in the world outside of us. Everything, every VVGP, ek patta nahi hilta hai without his will. Not a single patta moves without his will. So his will is manifested in everything that is happening around us. So whatever situations come up in our lives, they're happening because of his will. Whether we understand why his will is the way it is beyond us. We shouldn't even try. And that is not the purpose of our lives. It's not, our purpose is not to understand his will.
Or other circumstances or other situations.
Yeah. So everything that is outside of us is his will.
We can feel empathy for others in those situations. But that's why I said earlier also that our job is not necessarily to understand exactly what has happened, why it's happening, and find those intellectual answers. Our job is to work on our inner self, so that we can sharpen our own intellect to see Bhagwan Ji everywhere.
Exactly. So as Shalini Didi says, in the external world, only his will wins. His will is being done outside. The only place Bhagwan Ji has given us autonomy. We have no autonomy to VVGP outside of us. He has given us autonomy in only one place. That autonomy is inside of us. In our man, our Kurukshetra, our man is where we have autonomy. In that place, we have the choice of who wins the battle. We don't have a choice of not participating in the battle. That's not a choice at all. It is from the moment we are born, the duality is there in this world. This world is full of duality, right? It is made from duality. So the duality exists everywhere, and it exists inside of us. The Kauravas, the Pandavas, they exist inside of us. The Kurukshetra battle is happening every moment. Should I procrastinate? Should I do what I need to do? Should I have this laddu? Should I not have this laddu? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I, all of that is happening every moment of the day. Our choice is whether the Devatas win or the Asurs win. The Pandavas win or the Kauravas win. Every moment of the day. That is the autonomy we have. When something happens outside of us, how do we choose to react, respond, think, behave? How we transform that energy that is hitting us in different ways is the only choice we have. And that is the only Kurukshetra we have. That is the only fight we have. Not outside, inside.
But Katrina, एक क्वेश्चन आता है. फॉर एग्जांपल एक इंसान गाड़ी बहुत संभाल के चला रहा है, उसका एक्सीडेंट हो जाए और एक बहुत रैश चला रहा है, और सपोज जैसे फैमिली में बच्चों को लेके आप उनको टीच देम ये मत खाओ ये मत करो, एंड बीमार हो, सो दैट इट्स they've done it, matlab aisa nahi, they are being very careful. So at that moment, I mean, anybody, I mean, especially your close, they get into trouble. So obviously you also are now, in the situation to deal. So us time pe you can't say कि ये भगवान से आया, this happened because of God's will, etc. So that, kind of, you are careless, especially with lifestyle, you end up getting into that. So how do you, that moment, how do you accept कि हाँ ये भगवान से आया? तब तो बहुत मन चलता है, अरे बोला था ये नहीं, something is this eventually, जो there's a saying, कि जो भी कुछ आप करने में फ्री हो लाइफ में, हर कुछ करने में फ्री हो, लेकिन भोगने में तो फ्री हो ही नहीं ना. Whenever it comes, it is, you have to accept it. But at that moment, there's always a dilemma in the mind, यार कि अब ये कैसे भगवान से आई? ये तो, it's not like बहुत ध्यान से गाड़ी चला दी और किसी ने मार दी तो चलो एक्सीडेंट हो गया. अब ये तो आप चलाई, आप केयरलेसली रहे हो, तो एक्सीडेंट में आप कैसे मानोगे कि भगवान से आ गया? So that always disturbs my mind, that moment. Yeah, so I don't know if you have something to guide on this area.
So two things here, right? One is firstly, there are two parties here. There's a person who's driving and there is you. So you are feeling agitated because the VVGP, the circumstance has become unfavorable, and you thought your intent was to control it, right? But that VVGP, as Tuina mentioned, we can never control.
Not control, to protect.
So the second thing,
Protection is same as control, right? You're trying to control an outcome. आप किस चीज से प्रोटेक्ट कर रहे हो? आप किसी एक सर्कमस्टांस से प्रोटेक्ट कर रहे हो ना?
Unfavorable.
कंट्रोल कर रहे हो. हाँ, so आप कंट्रोल करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो.
So that's
and when that control doesn't come, तो फिर agitation होता है. I tried to control and that control didn't happen, is what is causing agitation in the first place. You were trying to control your exposure to a certain amount of suffering. You don't want to feel suffering, right? Now that suffering could be either direct or because somebody close to you is now hurt and you are now in a position where you have to take care of them, or because you feel hurt because they are feeling hurt, whatever, right? End of the day, you're feeling suffering. You're doing everything to control that. भैया मेरे को suffering नहीं होनी चाहिए, right? और अब मेरे को suffering हो रही है तो फिर मुझे गुस्सा आ रहा है, मुझे नहीं चाहिए था ये circumstance. I did everything, but उसने नहीं किया, अब उसकी वजह से मेरे को suffer करना पड़ रहा है, despite everything I did.
So now, just to rephrase the question.
Can I move ahead with the answer first? Yeah. So now here you have to go back and see कि यार सबसे पहले तो the fact that I'm trying to control is a problem. I can't control external things. I can control my actions. मेरा action क्या था? क्या मैंने अपना काम पूरा किया of telling my children or telling my spouse or telling whoever was in my space that यार I don't think this is the right thing to do. आपको रैशली नहीं ड्राइव करना चाहिए, डोंट ड्रिंक एंड ड्राइव, डोंट डू ऑल ऑफ दिस. पहले तो क्या मैं वो सारी चीजें कर रही हूँ जो मैं किसी और को प्रीच कर रही हूँ? Am I doing everything? Do I drive properly every time, or am I a rash driver myself? Right? So that's one. Second, if I'm telling somebody to eat properly, am I myself eating properly all the time? Am I doing the right things? So that is the first thing. First, we have to get those things inculcated in ourselves. And then my second duty is to make sure that others around me are aware. But that's about it. मैं उससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं कर सकती. So, अगर सामने वाला नहीं सुन रहा है, वो उसका प्रारब्ध है और मेरा प्रारब्ध है कोई कि मेरे सामने वो आदमी है जो ये एक्शंस करेगा, जिसका whose buddhi, whose intellect is not subtle enough to grasp that information that I'm giving to him and will eventually do something that will create a situation that I have to deal with. मेरा प्रारब्ध है वहां.
So now just to ask that question slightly in a different way, that VVGP happened exactly for that one reason that you got agitated. For Bhagwan Ji to remind you कि
that you have this inside of you.
Yeah, you have this inside of you. You have this attachment to an outcome inside of you. That is why it happened.
To improve, yeah.
And that is what we need to work on. That's what Tuina was saying earlier, is that work on your inner self. Because you could still be a very careful driver. You could still make sure everyone around you knows all the principles. But if that situation happened or was about to happen and it created agitation, it happened just for that reason.
And Bhagwan ji, he has he has these 4 arms, right? Bhagwan ji, we always see him as 4-armed person, right? He has a kamal. So the first time when he tries to tell us something is with that kamal, softly, right? He'll tell us softly. Somebody will come and give us, tell us, boss, aise aise hota hai ye. Sometimes we learn, sometimes we don't learn from that. Then comes the conch. The conch is when it will come very harshly to us, loud voice. It will come very harshly, very strongly to us in some fashion. Something will happen that will tell us. It may not hurt us badly, but it will be really jor ka dhakka lagega. Now you learn from that. You don't learn from that also. Then the third, Gada. Gada is like you will get hurt pretty badly. He will really strike you. Learn from this. If you don't even learn from that, then his chakra will come. Chakra is the ultimate. It will push you in a situation that is so grave and so difficult that you have no choice but to learn the lesson and transform yourself.
And that's exactly what Kavita was saying. That when you get pushed to that level of helplessness, then you only go to
you have only one choice. Then there is no other choice. So you had several choices before. You had like 10 directions to take, one of which led to God, but we didn't see that God ka rasta and we went the other way. So kar karke he keeps reducing your roads. Arey bhaiya, 7 में से 5 हो गई, 5 की अब 3 हो गई. Finally सिर्फ एक रास्ता रह जाएगा. So sometimes some of these really gross situations happen क्योंकि हम लोगों ने उससे पहले जो 50 और रास्ते आए हमारे पास, 50 और छोटे छोटे तरीके आए हमें सीखने के लिए, we didn't learn. Finally फिर आएगा एक बड़ा सा थप्पड़ भगवान जी का, या सीख लो अब.
तो हम स्पिरिचुअल जर्नी में तो हमें ये बातें तो समझ आती हैं. किसी को बोलो तो इसको तो समझ, तो सुनना भी पसंद नहीं है ये सब. उनको they like what, I mean, like it's very unmodern. Yeah. So kind of a talk, तो हमें तो ये बहुत सूक्ष्म से समझ आती है. Very true. And that also is not just for that person, also for your upliftment. Eventually you also have, there's a huge lesson for you. I mean, opportunity. And at the end of the day, even now when you look back, life is always, every situation has uplifted you. I mean, it could be very painful at that moment, but eventually it's always been positive. I mean, हर सिचुएशन में बहुत सी अच्छी बातें होती हैं, उस वक्त पे नहीं दिखती हैं, पर बाद में समझ आती हैं, नहीं यार ये तो अच्छा ही हुआ, ये तो चलो मिला, ये lost this, but this multiple gains also came in the process.
And this is what Bhagwan ji said. अभी अभी हम लोगों ने वो चैप्टर, वो वाला श्लोक पढ़ा, right? श्लोक ये last class में हमने पढ़ा था, श्लोक 3, right? Hardly one person among thousands makes any effort to realize me. And even among those, rarely anyone really knows my essential being. That's exactly what it is. So most people will not understand this part. And that's okay. It's perfectly okay. They are in their journey where they should be. Our purpose is not to tell them. Our job is not to tell them. So they will realize it as per the day they are ready to receive this from Bhagwan ji. Bhagwan ji will appear before them in some form or the other. Right?
And that's
so
it's your role, knowing at that moment, let's say someone close is going through and this is, so how do you comfort and how do you, uplift them? Because natural instinct is, I mean, again, it's where that and then you end up, but then that's not the point. I mean, that how do you uplift the other person in this situation in spite of knowing that this is,
I think the first thing you have to do is just be present and be able to listen with compassion and with empathy.
And no judgment.
And no judgment. Now, what is very important is what we don't recognize. Where does compassion and empathy come from? Compassion and empathy is not a relationship between a wounded and a healer. You're not a healer in that situation. Don't come to it with that perspective. You're not healing somebody. He's not a wounded person. He's not a victim. Don't treat yourself as a victim, and please do not treat anybody in this world as a victim. That's the worst disservice you can do to someone else. You are taking away their divinity the moment you make somebody a victim of their circumstances or anything. So that person is not a wounded person looking to you for healership. You are not God here. Leave that to God. Okay. So compassion and empathy is not a relationship between a wounded and healer. It is relationship between equals. You can only stand in and listen with empathy and with compassion to someone dealing with their darkness when you are fully aware of your own darkness. That is where empathy comes from. That is where compassion comes from. You are aware of your darkness. You are in touch with your darkness. You know where that comes from, how it manifests, when it manifests, how you have managed to overcome it or have not managed to overcome, or what you have done to get over it. From that space of connection to darkness comes your ability to empathize with someone else who's going through the same pain and darkness. If you can be that person, then you have done your job. Then you will be able to uplift them without wanting to uplift them. That comes from within you. Tej jo aata hai na, tejasvi ka tej comes from within them, and it engulfs the people around them automatically without you needing to do anything. वो करना नहीं है, करना हमें अपने अंदर है. बाकी सब जो होता है वो हो जाता है. So you need to be present to them in this manner. So our job is to be present to others in that manner. बाकी हो जाएगा, बाकी भगवान जी संभाल लेंगे. So it's
we had finished
end,
reading
right?
Shloka.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's read it and then we'll close that.
In the next 4 shlokas, the Lord would mention some things and some entities with which people are generally conversant in the world. And he would show how and in what shape his eminence in them can be experienced. To grasp the implications of this exposition, it would perhaps be helpful to keep in mind the example of a cinema projector. In a projector, the source of light is a high-power electric bulb. The film is made to pass in front of this bulb, and the images in the film are projected in the cinema screen. The different shapes appearing on the screen are created by the beam passing through the film and projecting different combinations of light and shade. The cause of these combinations is the light of the electric bulb, but the rays from the bulb are free from any combination of light and shade. The bulb throws out the beam of uniform incessant light, and the different patterns of light and shade are due to the images in the film. It is somewhat in this manner that the different physical forms are created when the sentient power of the life element passes through the insentient primal nature.
I think this is a fantastic example, right? It really details how we get powered by his energy without his energy influencing the world. Like this, it remains untouched, unaffected is the word. It remains unaffected by what is being created, but it is powering everything. As I mean, this, yeah. Yeah, you want to add anything on this example?
No, it's just there are so many layers to this, right? We understand it only when we read it the second time, the third time, no, the meaning of how his energy is powering everything and is still unaffected, which then comes to us. There is soul inside of us. We do good deeds, we do bad deeds, powered by his energy. Then all these questions, they start to answer themselves. Like, how can somebody who has divine in him do something bad to someone? And how do we not judge them? How do we connect to the divinity inside of him? How does his divinity not get sullied? All of those questions start to answer themselves. But it is not an easy thing to understand at the surface level. It's only when we are doing a lot of manan and nididhyasan, and when we are practicing every day the Gita principles, धीरे 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 थोड़ा 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 समझ में आने लगता है. मुझे भी अभी बहुत ही थोड़ा समझ में आता है. But it is better than when I read this the first time, way better than the first time. But there are so many layers that I will still understand. So I know that the more we practice, the more the deeper this seems. Every time you read it, oh, okay, something else chamkofies. Arey, ye bhi hai. Yes, this is how to look at it. Okay.
Let's do closing shlokas.
Yeah, we'll do the closing shlokas, and in the next one we will start to do the Vigyan part of things, of the Gyan that we've read so far.
Om Sarvesham
Sham swastir bhavatu sarvesham shantir bhavatu sarvesham purnam bhavatu sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramayaha sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om asato ma satkamaya तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय. ओम शांति शांति शांति. ओम पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ओम शांति शांति शांति.